Hey, friends, and welcome back to a new episode of Off the Cuff. I'm sorry this episode has been delayed. It's been a bit crazy here lately. So, I apologize for the tardiness of this video. It was supposed to be on Monday, and we're recording on Saturday. So, that's kind of where we're at. So, I apologize for that. This week's Off the Cuff is Black Death. This one is interesting because, like something like Last Jedi, the audience review is really low, not as low as Last Jedi, I promise. But the critic review is high. So we're going to mostly look at audience reviews today. So let's get right to it. First one from ACS Doug. As a 2-star. As a history buff, I wanted to like this movie. They don't make many movies set in the 14th century, and I would like to encourage more. Unfortunately, this story is not that good. I guess it depends on what your issue is with the story in regards to that. I don't think there's anything particularly unhistorical about it. They play it very straight as far as there's a necromancer, but like the necromancer is not really doing real necromancer things. The idea that it's very like it's magical, right? Where the the witch, for lack of a better term, uses herbs to keep Eddie Redmayne's love interest down for the count, and she's basically like delirious. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think the story might be a little lackluster, but I really enjoy the interactions between Eddie Redmayne and Sean Bean. I think a lot of the character interactions do hold through for the story. Two and a half, 2.5 star from Senna Femride. A medieval horror film with a rather interesting storyline, served by good European actors. Yeah, again, like I said in the review, I wouldn't necessarily call it a horror movie. It falls in more of a suspense line for me personally because there isn't a whole lot of horror elements aside from like a couple jump scares and a little bit of imagery. But it doesn't come off as horror to me. This one from Richard, 2-star. For what it is, it takes quite some time to get going, and even after things go south, it's still not all that engaging. The concept of remote pagans in the woods has been explored in other films much more deeply moving results, whereas even as a period piece, this film doesn't have much to look at. Atrocious handheld cinematography does a severe disservice to this well-chosen sets, and in the end, the story doesn't amount to much at all. That's a really interesting point because I didn't really get the handheld camera part of it very much, unless you're talking about like during the fight scenes, where the camera's a little wobbly. But I took that more as because the main character we focus on is Eddie Redmayne's character, who is a young monk who doesn't have much experience outside of the monastery. I took it more as a he's being overwhelmed by this situation. So I wouldn't necessarily call it a bad choice. That also could easily be me just making excuses for the movie. I'm more than welcome to be open to that kind of criticism. It's an interesting point about the cinematography itself, especially because of the cast you have, and that they are very well. They do a really good job with like the action and stuff like that. But I don't necessarily agree, but I definitely understand the point. 2.5 star. Some great acting at certain points, but felt like a drag to a weird end. Yeah, I can definitely understand that part of it. It takes some interesting turns and twists that I don't necessarily agree with. Um, but that being said, I I don't know how else you would expect the movie to end. Especially, not that this was made by Hollywood specifically, I don't think, but most movies nowadays portray Christianity in such a negative light, and it's really easy to do so. This movie, I think, honestly, is pretty fair across the board as far as that time that time period that we're in, what we're talking about and what we're looking at and that sort of thing. It's really interesting. There's also quite a few good reviews in here as well. Like a lot of enthralling movie, bad ending, 4 star. Maybe I wanted a little more from the film, but it kept me engaged. 3.5 star. Like there's quite a few good reviews in here as well. 2 star. It had its good parts. The acting was kind of bad, but it did keep me entertained. Don't go into this movie expecting too much. I also feel that it could have maybe been fleshed out more. I disagree. I think the acting is actually pretty good, all things considered. It's not, top tier or whatever, but given the material they have to work with, I think especially again, I'll be saying this a lot, especially Sean Bean and Eddie Redmayne. They both did an amazing job. And of course, I didn't bring it up in the video because I thought people might be getting annoyed by me bringing it up so much. But David Warner is also in this for a couple scenes as the priest leading the monks leading the monastery that Eddie Redmayne is at. And he's just such a good actor. Ugh, can't get enough of him. 2 star. The review needn't be long. Not a good movie on so many levels. If you want to waste 90 minutes of your life, there are better ways to do so. I wish the review was longer though, because that is too short of a review. Because again, I like getting in people's heads. I like to understand, okay, why is it a bad movie in your opinion? And I don't need it to be like an entire essay on it, but I would at least like a paragraph, like a basic like elementary school. Give me 5 sentences to like a 5 sentence paragraph to tell me why you don't like the movie. Um, because I think it's actually pretty good. I think it does have a weird ending, but that all being said, I'm not sure what else you would expect from this movie. 1.5 star. Depressing, definitely nothing cheery about the bubonic plague and the blame of the mass deaths with religion and witchcraft at the forefront of people's minds. With a good premise, still doesn't give this movie justice. Interesting. Again, wondering if it's somebody who is grumpy about it potentially portraying the church in a negative light and that sort of thing. Um, I mean, I don't know. It again, it doesn't portray the church in the best possible way if that is your leaning. But that being said, it's hard to say if the church was completely rosy 100% through. There's really interesting analysis that comedian Jimmy Carr was talking about actually on Joe Rogan's podcast, where he was talking about how there was a lot of brain drain in the church because of the Black Plague, because the priests and the monks were giving absolution to those dying. So of course you're losing a lot of your learned priests and stuff like that because they're obviously contracting the plague. So it's really interesting. So you have like that side of it, but then of course you have to assume that there's this darker side going on of like Sean Bean's character in this movie going after villages that may or may not be, quote unquote, practicing witchcraft to not have the plague come on them. Whereas the actuality is that the village was just super remote. So, of course, they didn't get the plague yet. Um, but it's an interesting dichotomy for sure. 3 star, very dark, very gritty, very depressing. That's short, sweet, and to the point, and not wrong. No one comes out looking good in this movie. Um, that said, it's still it's still an interesting watch, especially for Eddie Redmayne's character when you get through the whole thing and you can see exactly how he went down the path he went down. It's very interesting and very well done. All right, here's an interesting one from James B. 2.5 star. As you may have guessed from the title, this movie is rather dark. It was actually pretty well done. However, every time that I saw Sean Bean in the movie, I briefly thought that I was watching one of the Lord of the Rings movies. The story was interesting, and the movie held my attention throughout. My only real complaint was the last 5 minutes of the movie. I felt that the story suddenly changed and did not make much sense. I would say more, but I don't want to spoil it for anyone else who may be so inclined to watch this movie. Yeah, I don't know if you could tell. I generally do spoilers for these movies because it's like Black Death is what 15-year-old movie at this point. Maybe I shouldn't do spoilers. Um, that's fair. Again, I think it to not do too many spoilers. I think the last 5 minutes, it's true. You get kind of like a gear shift because it focuses on Eddie Redmayne's character and how he is reacted to the end of the movie or the events of the movie, basically. Um, but that being said, I think it's really interesting because if it ended the way you expect it to end watching the movie, you would be wanting more. You would want to be like, okay, so how did the end of the movie affect Eddie Redmayne's character? And it gives you a glimpse of it at the end, which is nice in my humble opinion. I mean, I enjoyed it. Yeah, it definitely feels like more of an epilogue to the movie, and it might last a little longer than I would want it to. But that being said, I think it's still a pretty decent ending. Okay, here's a 4 star. It reminds you how much things have changed. Think of it as a combination of action, mystery film with a few philosophical and horror themes thrown in. Yeah, I mean, it definitely has some depth to it. Again, I horror is horror is too much of a stretch for me. I would say it's a suspense, more of a suspense film in that regard. But that being said, yeah, absolutely, it has a lot of great combinations in it that are really interesting. Okay, we'll do one last one here. It's a negative review. Here's a half-star one. A movie without resolution. Change the period part, and it is any believe in God or crap stuff. Do not waste money on this piece of garbage. I'm not really sure what to say to that. It's like, oh, you changed the period part, and it is any believe in God or crap stuff. Like, I think this reviewer has missed the point of the movie. The period that the movie takes place in is partly why, like, believing God or stuff is like a universal thing. And it can happen at any time. You know, even you could have, you could have said it in the 2020 pandemic, and you could have had some similar discussions. Clearly not as deadly as the bubonic plague by any stretch of the imagination, but you still have these, why God, why kind of moments. Um, so yeah, I don't completely agree with that half-star review there. All right, thank you all so much for watching, and again, I'm very sorry that this took a little longer to get done. I'm gonna again try and move forward here. I have this week. Um, I'll have some little extra free time, so I'm hoping I can get ahead on some of the videos, and I've got a couple other videos in mind too to put up. Um, so yeah, I'm hoping to get a little bit of a backlog, and that way we don't fall behind like we have been. But again, thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate the support. We're up to 26,000 subscribers, 26,500 subscribers. So that's amazing, and I really really appreciate all of you so much. If you have any suggestions for movies or ideas for the channel, I have gotten some comments that have been really interesting as far as stuff that I would like to explore to do. So if you have anything like that, feel free to leave a comment or email me directly. I have my contact information on the YouTube channel. But yeah, otherwise, I hope you all are having a great weekend, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. take care, and I hope I see you in the next one.